World War I was the first modern war fought with modern weapons. It was an unprecedented bloodbath. But nowhere was this more true than on the Western Front. Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to look at the Western Front, a stalemate of blood. When most people think of World War I, they think of the Western Front, a series of bloody battles that resulted in millions of casualties for minimal territorial gain. In fact, by the end of the war, the map looked much like it had at the beginning. So why did the Western Front become such a stalemate? Well, let's get into it. The Western Front was the region of France and Belgium where the armies of the British Empire. France and their allies faced off against the Central Powers, primarily Germany. This region was chosen because it was close to Germany and offered a relatively easy path to the French capital of Paris. After the German declaration of war, German troops began their invasion through Belgium. Within a few weeks, they had pushed all the way to the Swiss border. Here, the exhausted allies were able to stabilize the front. Over the next few months, both sides built elaborate trench networks to protect themselves from the other. And here's why they did that. Trenches were the primary form of defense throughout most of the war. Soldiers would dig into the ground and create a network of tunnels and fortifications. They would use these trenches to protect themselves from the enemy fire, while still being able to effectively attack them. Trenches were dug along the entire Western Front, creating a sort of no man's land between the opposing sides. Trench warfare was not a new tactic, but its use on such a large scale was unprecedented. The idea was that if you could successfully defend your own territory, then you would be able to force the other side to do all the attacking. And since attacks were costly, this would eventually lead to victory. But the problem with this strategy is that it's only effective if you can keep your trenches safe. Conditions in the trenches were absolutely awful. Soldiers had to deal with thick, sticky mud that would cover them from head to toe. They shared their trenches with rats that would steal their food and spread disease. Disease was rampant in the trenches, and soldiers often had to deal with infected wounds or other illnesses. On top of all this, there was the constant threat of shelling. Whenever a soldier's head popped above the trench to take a look around, they risked being shot at. Also, when someone had to relieve themselves, they had to leave the safety of the trench, making them an easy target. Despite all this, the Western Front saw some of the most intense fighting of the war. Some of the major battles include the Somme, Verdun, and Passchendaele. The Battle of the Somme took place in 1916 and was one of the bloodiest battles in history. The British and German forces fought over a period of 6 months, resulting in over 1 million casualties. The battle was a tactical victory for the Germans, but it was considered a strategic victory for the British. Since they were able to bring the Germans away from the French capital, Verdun also took place in 1916 and was fought between the French and German forces. This battle was even more deadly than the Somme, with over 300,000 French soldiers killed. Despite the heavy losses, the French were able to hold on to their positions, which prevented the Germans from advancing any further. Finally, we have the Battle of Passchendaele, also known as the Third Battle of Ypres. This battle took place in 1917 and was fought between the British and German forces. The British were once again successful in bringing the Germans away from Paris. But at what cost? Over 250,000 British soldiers were killed or wounded during this battle. Overall, the Western Front was responsible for over 80% of the total casualties of World War I. This means that out of the estimated 40 million people killed during the war, over 32 million of them died on the Western Front. And for what? At the end of the war, the Allies had gained a total of 6 miles of German territory. That's right. After all that death and destruction, the Western Front had barely moved. So why was this stalemate never broken? There are a number of factors that contributed to the stalemate on the Western Front. One reason was that the Germans had the best military technology, including machine guns and poison gas. But this was countered by the fact that the Allies had the numerical superiority. Another reason was that neither side was able to effectively use their forces. This was due to a combination of factors, including the lack of training among the soldiers, the poor leadership, and the outdated strategies that were still being used. For example, many of the generals in charge of the Western Front were old and had not seen combat since the American Civil War. They simply didn't know how to effectively use their troops. The stalemate on the Western Front has had a lasting legacy. It's largely responsible for the way that World War I is remembered today. Too many, the Western Front is synonymous with World War I. The image of the soldier in the trenches has become a powerful symbol of the horrors of war. So there you have it, the Western Front, a stalemate of blood. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.